There are nights when silence is louder than any crowd I've ever heard. I've stood on stages before thousands. I've been cheered, booed, praised, and criticized. But lately, I've been listening to the silence, the kind of silence that makes you think about what truly matters. Sometimes I walk alone. No cameras, no audience, just me and God. I look at the world and I see division, families not speaking, people afraid to say what they feel, and a kind of emptiness growing, even in all the noise. And I ask myself, how did we get here? I'm not perfect, I've made mistakes, but one thing I've never lost is my desire for answers, and when men don't give answers, I've learned to ask heaven. One of those nights I sat in silence, closed my eyes, and simply said, Lord, if there's still something you want me to see, I'm listening. There was nothing in the air, no music, no flashing lights, just the faint sound of the wind through the trees. But something inside me began to shift. It was like my spirit was being taken somewhere, to a place where time didn't exist, where truth didn't hide behind headlines or votes or fame. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. It was a state I can only describe as soul awakening, and then I felt it. Something was approaching, not with violence, but with a power that demanded reverence, like I was about to hear something that would change everything. That's when he began to speak, not with ordinary words. It was like each thought pierced straight into my heart. Each image that entered my mind felt more real than any speech I've ever written. And in that moment, I realized wars don't begin with tanks. They begin within us. It didn't come like lightning. There was no thunder. But suddenly, I saw it. Not with my eyes, but with something deeper. A vision. Vivid, clear, unshakable. I was standing on a mountain. Below me were cities familiar, yet broken. People were running, but not from bombs. They were running from truth, from each other. I saw families arguing across dinner tables, nations turning backs on their neighbors, leaders clinging to power while children cried in silence. Then I looked to my right, and there was light, not blinding, but steady. In that light, I saw him. Not like in paintings, not like the stories, but I knew it was him. It wasn't loud, but it was more powerful than any voice I've ever heard. He didn't speak with words. He showed me. He showed me a fire, not one that burned buildings, but one that burned inside people. Anger, pride, fear. It was spreading. But then he pointed to a small group, quiet, steady, unafraid. They weren't shouting. They weren't hiding. They were standing. And I knew these are the ones who will endure. Not because they had the most money or the biggest platforms, but because they had something the fire couldn't touch. Faith. I asked without words, is this the war? And I heard not in my ears, but in my soul, the war has already begun. I turned toward him again. My heart was racing. My hands were trembling. I didn't speak, but he heard the question in my silence. Who survives this? He looked at me, and without a single word, images began to fill my mind. I saw a man give up his reputation to defend someone weaker. I saw a mother praying even after being abandoned. I saw a young woman give away her last piece of bread to a stranger. I saw an old man reading scripture in the dark, alone but never bitter. These were not the richest, not the strongest, not the loudest, but they were rooted, unshaken. Then he showed me the others, those who mocked, those who used fear to lead, those who changed truth to gain power. They stood tall, but their feet were on sand. And when the storm came, they fell. Quickly, quietly, forgotten. He turned back to me, and I felt this, not heard it, but felt it deep within. Not all who look strong will endure, not all who seem small will fall. He let that sit in my soul like a seed. I knew he wasn't warning me. He was inviting me to choose where I stand, not as a politician, not as a businessman, but as a man. And he wasn't just talking to me. He was talking to you too, to all of us. Because when the fire rises, only truth stands. When I opened my eyes, I was still in the same place, same chair, same room, same world, but something inside me had shifted. The silence was still there, but now it was filled with meaning. I sat there for a long time, not as a former president, not as a public figure, but as a man who had seen something he could never unsee. I thought about speaking publicly. I thought about writing it all down, but I realized this message wasn't meant for headlines. It was meant for hearts. That's why I'm telling you this now, not to convince you, not to preach, but to say what I wish someone had told me. There is a war inside all of us, between pride and humility, between fear and faith, between the noise and the voice that still whispers truth. And we don't fight it with power or titles or money. We fight it by listening, really listening, to the ones we ignore, to the quiet moments we avoid, to the voice inside, the one we've silenced for too long. I'm not the same man I was, not because of what I've done, but because of what I've seen. And if you're still listening now, maybe this vision wasn't just for me, maybe it's for all of us. Because when the shaking begins, when the fire spreads and the truth finally rises, only those who listened will be left standing. What I saw, it didn't ask for my opinion. It didn't care about my past titles. It simply showed me what's coming and who we have to become to face it. Let me be honest. There was a time when I believed power could fix anything. A strong economy, a strong hand, a strong voice. But now I see it differently. Power without purpose is just noise. Strength without soul is just pride. I saw people in that vision, mighty, confident, proud. They built towers with no foundations, and when the shaking came, the towers fell, and no one remembered their names. But the quiet ones, the kind ones, the people nobody wrote about, they remained, not because they fought harder, but because they loved deeper, believed stronger, stood quieter. It hit me then. The real battle isn't over land or money. It's over what we carry inside. We can win every argument, but if we lose our soul, what have we really won? I used to think my greatest speeches were on stages, but maybe the greatest thing I'll ever say is right here, right now. Listen, not to me, not to the media, not to the noise. Listen to the still, small voice that calls you to forgive, to let go, to rise. Because when power fails, purpose will carry you. I used to think fire was only destruction. I imagined bombs, cities crumbling, nations at war. But the fire I saw in that vision was something else entirely. It didn't burn buildings. It burned lies. It burned pride. It burned every false identity we'd built around ourselves. It moved through homes, not to destroy them, but to reveal them. People tried to run from it. They poured distractions over their lives, money, followers, power, pleasure. But the fire, it saw through all of that. It didn't care who you voted for. It didn't care how much you made. It didn't care if you were famous. It only cared about one thing, truth. Was there truth in your life? Were your words real? Was your love conditional? Were you standing for something or just standing in the way? I saw people fall to their knees, not because they were weak, but because they realized the masks were gone. And some stood up free for the first time in their lives, because the fire, as terrifying as it looked, was never meant to destroy them. It was meant to refine them, like gold in the furnace, like wheat separated from the chaff. It wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And I knew if it came for me, if it comes for us all, then we need to be ready, not by stockpiling, not by shouting louder, but by becoming lighter. Let go of what doesn't matter, hold fast to what does, because when the fire comes, only what's real will remain. After the fire passed, in my vision, everything looked different. The noise was gone, the towers were ashes, the crowds had scattered, but what remained was beautiful. I saw families hugging, not because they had to, but because they finally saw each other again. I saw enemies sitting together, heads bowed in silence, sharing bread and forgiveness. I saw children laughing, not on screens, not in distraction, but in real, honest joy. And I saw people who had lost everything on the outside, but found something unshakable on the inside. They had no titles, no spotlight, no applause, but they had peace. Peace that didn't come from winning or proving anything or controlling the outcome. It came from surrender. Not surrender to defeat, but surrender to truth, to love, to mercy, to the one who sees all and still says, "You are mine." I saw myself there too, not standing above, not leading the moment, but listening like I'm doing now. Because that's what remains after the fire, what we listened to, what we chose, who we became. And when the world turns to ashes, when the voices fade, when the headlines are long gone, the soul still stands, or it doesn't. When I came back from that vision, I didn't have a plan. I didn't write a speech. I didn't call the press. I just sat still. And then a thought came to me, one I couldn't shake. Every soul will face the fire, but not every soul will be ready. We prepare not by building walls, but by breaking them. Not by shouting louder, but by sitting longer. Not by defending ourselves, but by searching ourselves. The war that's coming, it may not look like the wars we've seen before. No tanks, no sirens, no flags, just choices, millions of them, each one shaping who we are and who we'll become. You can ignore this. You can scroll past, you can laugh. I probably would have once. But if you're still here, if you're still listening, maybe, just maybe, this wasn't just for me. Maybe the vision I saw, the voice I heard, the fire I felt was also meant for you. Because the greatest gift God ever gave us was not power, it was choice. And today, that choice is yours. To stay the same, or to rise, to harden, or to surrender, to cling to fear, or to walk in truth. I've made my choice, and if you're still listening, I think you're ready to make yours too.